there I was. Deep in the labyrinth of my own f***ed upness, I couldn't even admit to myself how f***ing lost I was. Stuck on an endless carousel of despair, mostly stemming from the scars of yesteryear's heartaches and tragedies as a man. That flawed flesh bag with its predetermined social contract. You know the drill if your own meat puppet bears that Y chromosome. You're expected to be tough yet tender, confident but not cocky, killing it in your career without letting it devour you from within, respectful to women but never patronizing. The damnable dance of contradictions society choreographs for us bros. My biggest source of anxiety? Still searching for that one elusive key, a meaningful career or job path. The clock was ticking louder with every passing day, and each second felt like a nail in my coffin as I realized my youthful windows were closing faster than the speed of light in a black hole. It was a nightmarish spiral of self-doubt, made worse by the societal mask we are all pressured to wear. That everything is A-okay when it most certainly isn't. But fuck society and its ageist bullshit. As I grew older, they started disliking me even more, especially if you weren't some big shot in the social food chain. In a long-term relationship with an angelic woman for years now, yet feeling more isolated than ever. Receding hairline, yellowing teeth, and an expanding beer belly. I was transforming into something less appetizing to look at with each sunrise. People smiled at me less. Women smiled at me even less. Then there was the ever-present specter of existential dread that always knew how to make a grand entrance. What the hell have you done with your life? What are you doing now? Why do I feel so goddamn tired and melancholic most days? Man, I can't quite pinpoint when the ominous figure of Jordan Peterson first crossed my path, but when he did, his words just clicked.
And you have to be able to say no when it's time to say no, and you have to mean it. And so then you have to think and plan strategically so that when you're going to say no, you can mean it and it will stick. You know, and that takes a certain amount of integrated malevolence, I would say. And once it's integrated, it's not malevolence, it's strength. It's strength of character. It's the ability to stand your ground. So a man who's capable of aggression but has it under control is a way more useful man than one who cannot do that. And so you're willing to go get a job, but you're terrified of an interview. It's like, there's a dragon for you.
It was as if he was saying all the shit I've ever wanted to say but never had the balls to utter out loud. Instantly hooked, I dived in head first. Sure, there were a handful of YouTubers already trashing him, but fuck them. I didn't let their noise muddy my newfound clarity. During COVID-19 isolation, I bought his 12 Rules for Life book and found it to be an enjoyable read, chock full of captivating chapters about navigating life, raising kids, maintaining relationships, and dealing with society's bullshit. It wasn't just another self-help book, more like a badass manifesto to tame the chaotic world we men live in. Of course, there were some warning signs I noticed but chose to ignore. We're all a little deaf when it comes to our instincts when someone's saying stuff that seems tailor-made for us. Politically, I'd always seen myself as left of center, but Peterson's perspective started drawing me in like a moth to a flame. YouTube's algorithm is ruthless. Once it figures out your kinks, it locks you in a bubble and drags you deeper into the rabbit hole. I was already falling down that fucking wormhole, searching for answers to all my problems. Who is that bald mother keeps popping up?
So you can say something ridiculous and then say feminist theory. And they're like, oh, it's in feminist theory.
Joe Rogan, I'm told. What's with everyone hating on feminists? Wait a sec. Are feminists against everything that actually makes sense? I fought it, but the siren call dragged me in like a celestial black hole. My past self stood there, watching as I slipped deeper into the tunnel. The Lord of the Rings Mega Edition book, Fight Club DVD, tattered love letters, metal shirts, old Polaroids, ghosts. Everything swirling around us sucked into the gravitational whirlwind. As I struggled to hold on, my reflection yelled, "Hold tight!" He tossed his worn metal t-shirt, a skull with "Embrace Chaos" in bloodthirsty letters. "Wear this," he said as he peeled off his own shirt and threw it to me. "I'll see you on the other side." But my grip faltered, and I tumbled headfirst into the abyss. Desperately, I clung to anything floating by, trying to remember who the hell I was as the Skull and Chaos shirt slipped from my grasp. Fuck! The t-shirt faded away in the distance, disappearing in the event horizon's edge. "What?" I screamed. Too late. My past, my identity, and my salvation vanished into oblivion. All that remained was a lingering question. Did I choose order or embrace the chaos that once defined me? My cranium rested on the desk where I'd been sitting, hands aching from supporting its weight, laptop open at 11:58 p.m., girlfriend slumbering soundly. Silence blanketed the surroundings. Time to catch some Z's too. Shut down the laptop for the night. Now in darkness. Exited my chamber, a light beckoning me. Laptop back on. YouTube home staring me down with low carb and keto. What about cholesterol? What the fuck was keto? Couldn't recall much about it before. Closed the laptop, this time for real. Morpheus ready to embrace me in slumberland. The following dawn, I found myself once again at my laptop's glowing screen. Dr. Peterson had infiltrated every corner of my YouTube timeline like a digital plague, a tantalizing epidemic.
Who's actually weak, and we have Pride Month. Well, what are we celebrating? First of all, how about we don't celebrate Pride? Bloody nature worshippers, they'll take everything from you.
His lectures on gender dynamics were particularly addictive as he quoted scientific studies to back his controversial statements, making them all the more enticing.
Men I talk to in general are absolutely terrified of women because they're terrified of being rejected. And the terror exists in precise proportion to the attraction to the woman, which is a horrible paradoxical situation to be in. It's often why men make such fools of themselves in front of women that they're attracted to. It's because, first of all, they don't see the woman that they're attracted to, because what the hell do they know about her? They don't see her as an individual. They see her as the manifestation of a judgmental ideal.
It made sense to me. It fit like a key in a lock. One fascinating study caught my attention, involving the so-called Nordic Countries Paradox. These progressive utopias were seen as bastions of gender equality. Yet, research revealed that young people there tend to slip into traditional gender roles when choosing careers more than their counterparts elsewhere. More men aspired to be engineers while women gravitated towards psychology and healthcare professions. Peterson explained this paradox with scientific precision, insisting that if we eradicate cultural biases, our biological impulses become the driving force behind our decisions.
Differences in occupational choice that are also, by the way, quite great in Scandinavia, especially in the case of engineering and nursing, that are mostly due to biological differences, and you cannot minimize that by social engineering.
It was an unavoidable order, he argued, and I couldn't deny it. Once, in a realm where TikTok reigned supreme, Peterson's spectral presence would occasionally flicker amidst the feed's chaos. However, more and more, an enigmatic bald figure emerged, Andrew Tate. His persona oozed red flags like a sewer system overloaded with toxic waste. The aggression, Lamborghinis as backdrops, hucksterism of get-rich-quick schemes, an air of exploiting life's losers.
You're sitting there saying, I want to be rich. You don't even have a plan to get rich. How the fuck are you going to get rich on accident? How's that going to happen?
Despite this, some of his blunt rhetoric struck a nerve, especially regarding women and societal hypocrisies that favored men in certain ways. One example from the Tate archive resonated powerfully.
You see all these chicks on a boat. For the man to get on that boat, it's one square at a time, right? He has to get a good job. He has to get his taxes right. He has to find a way to leverage credit. He has to meet the guy who sells the boats. He has to go through all this shit stage by stage by stage to finally pull off being on that yacht and having that yacht at the age of 56. A chick, what does she need? Lip fillers? Boom. Zip. On. She gets straight on.
In his imitable fashion, Tate delivered vivid imagery and exuded the "fuck you, I do me" attitude that ignored convention's shackles. But therein lay the issue. His messages and modus operandi were flawed beyond repair. The fact he could impact not just a critical middle-aged man like myself, but also the impressionable minds of disillusioned teenagers, my potential progeny, was cause for alarm. Could Tate, warping the next generation's understanding of reality, create a more harmonious world? No. It was my responsibility to explain life's complexities. I would take up residence on YouTube, share my perspective, and enlightening all who tuned in. My channel would be their salvation. This was my calling. And so I did. In the coming weeks, I tackled the task with ruthless dedication, crafting an idea and writing a single YouTube script each day. No matter the madness of my waking hours or the darkness of my slumber, for an entire month, I churned out these scripts like a well-oiled machine, astonished at my own work ethic. Then I shifted gears and started molding those scripts into YouTube videos. Each video touched upon a different dispute, but all were bound together by the overarching theme, the way the world works. Titles such as "Your Brain is Lying" or "Why LinkedIn Poisoned Us," and so forth. I was unwavering in my approach to this labor and couldn't help but marvel at myself. After a month of writing every day, followed by another 15 days of scripting, recording audio, and editing, I began posting the videos. And then came the crushing disappointment. My tireless work seemed futile. Videos languished in the single digits, 20 views here, 6 there, a lucky 79 at best. It was utterly demoralizing. I followed the YouTube handbook to the letter: better thumbnails, snappier descriptions, and optimized SEO. But my efforts amounted to nothing. I searched for the source of my misfortune, tried revising the scripts that had already been written. The outcome? Exactly the same. Why? Because my videos were too damn sophisticated. The audience craved sensationalism, controversy, and attitude. Not the goddamn truth. They wanted Tate, but I wasn't him and didn't want to be. I couldn't jettison my integrity, but at that moment, YouTube was a vast, echoing void, where I screamed into the emptiness while everyone remained deaf to my pleas. It left me feeling drained. Time took its toll to heal from this tormenting period. As every creator knows, making videos is an exhausting, time-consuming endeavor that saps your physical, mental, and emotional reserves. I needed rest, recuperation, and so did my body. It flaked, and I scratched my chest incessantly. The struggle had taken its toll. The following morning, my fingers tapped anew against the keys of my laptop. A ritualistic resurrection after yesterday's digital slumber. There it was, the YouTube page left open, a flashing beacon calling me back to low carb and keto. What about your cholesterol? This video, seemingly impatient for its audience, awaited me, promising an unconventional lesson in the complexities of nutrition.
What's interesting about this saturated fat heavy recipe is that it isn't recent at all. It came from an 1895 cookbook, a time when heart disease rates were at an all-time low. At the time, cooking with vegetable oils was almost unheard of. But as the process of hulling and pressing seeds and beans was mechanized, vegetable oils became cheaper than butter or animal fat.
The crux of this video was this. We had been duped by the vegetable oil industry into abandoning our ancestral fats, butter and lard, in favor of their oily alternatives. How did they accomplish such deception? By launching a smear campaign against saturated fats and cholesterol, touted as villains rather than health boosters. Intrigued, I clicked on another video by the same YouTube personality, What I Have Learned, or WIL for short.
Recently, low-carb diets, intermittent fasting, and even prolonged fasting have become very popular, and they all have something in common. They move you towards entering the state of ketosis. Ketosis is a state where your body is running primarily on fat from your diet or your body. Ketogenesis is when fats are broken down into something called ketones. Entering this fat-burning state of ketosis can be perfectly natural, and might even be the preferred state for humans, compared to having our bodies always running off of carbohydrate.
Once again, I was hooked. I paused, drawing breath, before diving into my newfound obsession, keto dieting. an outlandish concept even within my progressive urban jungle, where the very notion of meat consumption raised eyebrows. But here was the gist. Keto had a reputation for being radical, and I, a gluttonous fiend, dreaded failing at it in my food fanatic environment. My corpulent nemesis taunted me from the mirror. How many times had I tried to vanquish you? How much frustration lingered over countless attempts that yielded nothing but uncertainty? And if the remedy lay in consuming more fat? The concept was preposterous yet made twisted sense. This enlightened guru had cracked the code. To achieve results that screamed for attention, one must be bold enough to embrace actions equally bold. After years of fumbling in the dark, I finally found a solution. The manual, a scientifically proven diet, hidden from the masses due to financial interests. I dove headfirst into intermittent fasting and keto dieting simultaneously. My unsuspecting girlfriend began to worry. I'd always adored gourmet meals and variety in my dining experiences. Then, out of nowhere, I found myself chowing down on a buttered steak, 2 eggs, and peanut butter for dessert. The first few days with both fasting and keto went smoothly. I maintained control, refraining from cheating or breaking the rules. One day, ventured out for a meal, and as fate would have it, my lunch consisted solely of raw fish, like a sushi chef's dream come true. Only this time, I devoured twice the usual portion. With no carbs to weigh me down, achieving that satisfied feeling wasn't going to be easy, especially during these initial days. So far, so good. We ambled out onto the streets after our feast, when a strange, insistent itch manifested itself between my upper belly and lower ribs. I scratched feverishly through my clothes, trying to ignore what felt like an ever-increasing intensity. By the time we reached home, that irritation was all I could think about. I tore off my shirt, anticipating a horrifying spectacle in the mirror. What greeted me were swollen wings of redness spreading across my lower chest and abs, an uninvited, monstrous rash. The sight of it sent shivers down my spine. What the hell was happening to me? "Everything okay?" called out my girlfriend from behind the door. Yeah, I lied. But I knew better. It was just the fish, perhaps some allergic reaction or other bizarre occurrence. So I continued with the diet and kept my shirt on whenever she was near or in bed with me. Wearing a shirt in bed felt like a barrier between us, a constant reminder of the secret I was hiding and the growing distance it created. But after 2 days, I could no longer stand it. Google was my savior, offering up the potential cause of my suffering, keto rash. It seemed some unlucky souls on a ketogenic diet experienced this repulsive rash. One person even said, "Don't worry, mine went away after 4 months." 4 months? 4 eternal months of agony and that repellent sight? That was more than I could bear. The diet was doomed. Carbs were reintroduced, and the rash began to recede. But I failed. The dream of a flawless body and mind eluded me. The gates had closed. Just like Tantalus, punished by the gods for his misdeeds, whenever he reached for food or water to satiate himself, it was snatched away, leaving him forever hungry and thirsty. I too was denied control over my body, my life, reduced to a torturous existence of temptation and inevitable failure. Robert Greene and his notorious 48 Laws of Power surfaced on my TikTok feed.
One of the most dangerous books on the all.
Never outshine the master.
Learn to keep people dependent on you.
Initial impressions suggested it was a handbook on deviance, a text forbidden in cell block libraries. People raved about its cunning, insisting it's not jaded, it's simply understanding how the world works to safeguard against those who wield these methods.
Don't understand the people that you're dealing with. You really don't know who they are. You're walking around thinking that you know your wife or your husband, your children, your boss, your friends.
The hype had a whiff of sensationalism, but in the end, I purchased the foul-smelling book. At first glance, its contents were as vile and toxic as the title implied. Chapters had titles like, "Never wholly trust your friends," "Learn to exploit your enemies." Really? What kind of existence is one where you distrust those closest to you? Chapter 11 whispered, learn to keep others dependent upon you, making my skin crawl. Play the part of an ally, spy on them instead. Get others to do your labor, but always steal their glory. Edison may have played this game well, but I digress. Was this meant to be some sort of self-help guide? If so, it fell far short of inspiring. But I kept reading. As suggested by the YouTube channels I followed, Greene's book also referenced historical examples for each law, Machiavelli being the obvious choice, but also Talleyrand and mysterious Chinese-Mongolian generals or princes. It alluded to a timeless truth. This is how things have always worked. This is how they operate now, and this is how they'll continue to function. It was chilling to think that human nature had been so consistently manipulative and power-hungry throughout history. But there was solace in understanding the underlying laws of our twisted world. At least you could adjust your actions accordingly. At least there were rules, however repugnant they might be. And as I closed the book, a bittersweet realization washed over me. The cruel game had been played since time immemorial, and knowing its mechanics was better than being its helpless pawn. Drowning in the slimy depths of chapters unholy, specifically, less is never enough. Author Greene tossed up an appetizer. Coriolanus, warrior hero turned politician who whiffs it big time. This Roman badass slays enemies on battlefields, but when he tries to play statesman, shit goes south faster than a summer blockbuster sequel. After initially being hailed by the plebs, his smug self-satisfaction from electoral success triggers a verbal tsunami of anti-plebeian rhetoric, which ultimately leads to banishment from Rome. Greene's narrative drips with juicy details. Coriolanus showing off his war wounds, the exact words he spews during pre-election days, his stance against distributing grain to the masses, and so on. Damn, the romance of Roman history has always swirled in my blood, so I dug deeper into Coriolanus' life and speeches. The more I unearthed, the more I noticed something off. Yes, Coriolanus was real, but every single detail Greene described in his book, a twisted mess of fact and fiction. Was it possible that Greene cherry-picked Shakespeare's plays of the same name, weaving make-believe into history to back his so-called laws? Book closed, eyes shut. I had an epiphany. It was all fabricated, or at least partially so. Truth morphs and mingles with lies to support someone's vision. Authors aren't immune to this. So it wasn't the lesson I learned or Peterson, but a twisted form of enlightenment. Craving more, I dove back in. I started digging. Something's not right with this Picard Tate, but fuck it. Peterson? Could it be the celebrated shrinker tripped up on his facts? Diving deeper into the Nordic enigma's murky depths, I discovered one of the authors had publicly eviscerated old Pete for misreading the research like a lost teenager deciphering a dirty mag. Turns out, Pete had his wires crossed, big time. The study wasn't about ladies picking stereotypical jobs because they were biologically destined to do so. Instead, it was a cry for help from an economy drowning in state-controlled sectors. Cleaning, childcare, and elder care, traditionally performed by women within the home. In a nutshell, Peterson spun the study's findings around 180 degrees. He swapped a social-cultural factor for a biological one. In doing so, he missed the real problem staring us right in the face: outdated systems that needed an overhaul. Not a bunch of misguided women choosing their career paths because of nature, not nurture. As I dove deeper into the rabbit hole, my disenchantment grew. Even the genesis of Peterson's meteoric rise as a pop scientist and social media sensation was riddled with bullshit. Back in 2017, an obscure psychology professor became an overnight YouTube superstar after dropping a video confronting his students about Bill C-16.
Over a line we shouldn't cross. The newest legislation is requiring people to use.
But you are aware that that's being put in place so that we can't get fired.
The video went viral on YouTube, setting the stage for the Peterson we know today. And I'll be damned if his C-16 arguments didn't resonate with me, at least initially, until I learned that truth was twisted like a pretzel. Peterson had worked Bill C-16 beyond recognition. He made it seem as though you could land in jail for accidentally misgendering a trans person. But here's the deal. Bill C-16 never threatened anyone with arrest over pronoun usage, and neither did the Canadian Human Rights Act. The law didn't even mention pronouns. This pop guru had turned a storm in a teacup into a hurricane of misinformation. Similarly, the YouTube channel WIL, or however they labeled themselves, peddled questionable science, cherry-picking and misconstruing studies while often having a vested interest in the results. I won't bore you with a laundry list of examples. That's not the point here. The gist is that beneath an appealing veil of scientific authority, internet personalities concealed a conservative agenda catering to contemporary men's anxieties. Was it a liberal Trump collusion? Unlikely. It was far more mundane. Fame and fortune. These folks uncovered a narrative that worked for them and ran with it. No truth, no good intentions. The Messiah turned out to be a liar, the game rigged from Jump Street. You can't amass YouTube stardom by spilling hard truths. You need to entertain and exude confidence. And so therein lies their true talent. They were masterful, ideological swindlers. I found myself in an odd mix of disillusionment and relief. Feeling gullible, yet at peace. No more Joe Rogan, Peterson, or YouTube sensations pushing a right-wing agenda. Months rolled by. I steered clear of online controversy, even took my girlfriend to see Barbie. A cinematic disaster, we both agreed. I even kicked off a regular exercise routine. To delve deeper into the science behind fitness and weightlifting, I began following neuroscientist Andrew Huberman. No politics, no drama, just straight-up research.
I'm guessing many of you have not heard of adaptogens. The strict definition of adaptogens is still evolving, meaning no one really knows what adaptogens mean and how does one go from being under-muscled to properly muscled, and what is that? And performance? There's just a small subset of chemicals that you're leveraging toward that change.
Huberman's lengthy podcast episodes featured experts spanning various fields, diving deep into every topic. As cautious as I was with selecting my podcast personalities, I saw no red flags with him. And in the end, my faith remained unshaken. He wasn't a Peterson or Rogan clone. He had no dogmatic agenda. And his demeanor suggested moral integrity. I liked the guy. As time ticked by, my obsession deepened into the methodologies this mysterious figure peddled for an optimal existence.
The most important things are the foundational practices, which are get your sleep right. Best way to get your sleep right is get your morning sunlight exposure.
It all sounded like common f***ing sense, yet he offered his devotees a scientific pathway to achieve each tenet. All in the name of progress, not bullshit enlightenment. This wasn't a self-serving guru spinning resentment against society for clicks, but an expert tackling real-world problems with scientific precision. There was, however, one red flag that flickered in my periphery. The opening minutes of each podcast episode were devoted to product hawking, supplements specifically.
Supplement is an electrolyte drink that has everything you need and nothing you don't. That means plenty of salt, sodium, magnesium, and potassium.
But it didn't give off a shady vibe. Huberman came off as genuine and sincere. I let the minor inconvenience slide, focusing on the goldmine of practical knowledge he provided. One day, deep in my research for an upcoming video about the deceptive nature of our minds, I stumbled upon a Reddit wormhole. A post titled, "Do you trust Andrew Huberman less? Why or why not?" It piqued my curiosity, so I clicked. And there it was, an alternate universe unfolding before me. The subreddit raged over a recent New York Magazine article detailing accusations against the wellness guru. The article painted a disturbing picture of Huberman's personal life in stark contrast to his public image as a proponent of mental and physical well-being. Allegedly, he engaged in manipulative and clandestine relationships that led to at least one sexually transmitted infection among his partners. This revelation cast a pall over Huberman's crusade for health and self-improvement. His alleged exploits included simultaneously maintaining 6 amorous relationships while traveling across the country, employing what some had labeled organizational jujitsu. It left a bitter taste in my mouth. But let's face it, the guy I'd been following was exposed as an emotional manipulator and cheater. Not quite the inspiring figure for a better life we all wanted to believe in. Yet there remained the question, did Huberman's moral failings taint the scientific facts he espoused? Could his personal shortcomings undermine the lives of millions he allegedly improved through his podcast? I searched for any redeeming quality, but the situation continued to unravel. A person without ethical fiber was indeed more likely to lie, even when it came to science. And sure enough, a slew of new articles began cropping up, accusing Huberman of cherry-picking scientific studies and allowing his guests to flat-out lie about the validity of research.
This podcast that he was on with Tim Ferriss back in 2023 is full of absolute just nonsensical reasoning and rubbish.
And I worry so much is that you can put one paper out there and it might have some data in it, and it's on mice, or it's in a petri dish, or it's even on like a small group of like 8 people or whatever.
Yeah.
But then he extrapolates protocols.
But those experts are also the outliers in their respective fields, right? He's brought on Sarah Gottfried, who spreads pseudoscience about regulating your hormones through diet. She is not respected within the OBGYN community for that misinformation. And
the supplements he endorsed? Total bullshit.
And probably the elephant in the room is that there's a huge financial incentive. I found this website called affiliate.com, and they said that Athletic Greens affiliates and AG1 affiliates get 30% commission for each sale. If you look at Andrew Huberman podcasts, he would get $30,000 per episode. So you can't really disregard the financial incentive.
The way you present that material is going to be beneficial towards your sponsors, which is like, if you were going to write an academic article, this should be the biggest conflict of interest at the bottom of it possible.
I stared into the reflection, and there he was, a healthier, fitter version of myself. The results of my devotion to Huberman's teachings couldn't be denied, but then the question lingered. Good or bad, should I keep following this manipulative prick? He wasn't peddling ideologies, but had he become a scientific con artist of sorts? I was torn and uncertain. Perhaps it wasn't about right or wrong, but something beyond such simplicity. Life itself, chaotic as it is. Sometimes, you must make sense from the disorder by embracing it for what it is. The mirror flickered, and I jumped in alarm. In its surface, a 20-something version of me materialized, holding something in his hand and extending his arm across the mirror's boundary. He handed me a crumpled black t-shirt with a skull printed on the front and the words "Embrace Chaos" emblazoned below it. The fabric was frayed but patched together, a worn relic of our shared journey. I slipped it over my body as the image of the young me faded into bright beams, consumed by light. Peterson had vanished from my YouTube feed, save for an old lecture deconstructing childhood narratives like Pinocchio or Peter Pan. Surprisingly intriguing stuff. It was a sun-drenched day as I pedaled to the gym, listening to Huberman's podcast. Some concepts made sense, others sounded slightly suspect. I even deciphered the Huberman conundrum. Despite his potential truths, one couldn't construct a better life solely through self-improvement without considering moral values. When the Huberman scandal erupted, this dilemma resonated. A similar flaw plagued Peterson's philosophy. Clean your own room and all will be well. But what about the rest of humanity? Would he tell Martin Luther King Jr. to focus on his own space instead of protesting in the streets? Would it make a better world, or more importantly, forge a better life for himself? No. So, here comes the twisted moral of our little tale, my dears. To truly transform your existence, you can't just focus on yourself like a narcissistic zealot. You gotta consider the souls around you and how you treat them, not just shoving science-based facts down your throat until you overflow with knowledge. Be wary of tying your heartstrings to those scientific truths. It's a freaking oxymoron, I tell ya. Learned that one the hard way. Now, be extra cautious when stepping into the Manosphere. That toxic swamp is teeming with crap that'll make you sick. If they flog supplements, consider it a neon red flag. There's often an incestuous relationship between believers of medical conspiracies and their dependence on those supplements. I ain't saying don't enter, just be careful, especially if you're lost. When in doubt, trust your gut. Even if it doesn't lead you straight to paradise, it'll get you there eventually. My guts took me there, sharing my story and bleeding emotion all over the place. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I don't know you from Adam, but I want to ask you to support me anyway. This video costed me endless hours of labor, writing, editing, recording, and bearing my soul. No sponsors here, so show some love by subscribing to my channel if you found something in it. More videos are coming your way. Until then, may your life continue with passion and purpose.